Okay, now it's time for the second part of this series. The strange enigma I discovered that is not 100% my discovery. It's actually a belief that was given by, what is his name? Jeff Benner from the Ancient Hebrew Research Center. So we're really cooking here. We got a lot of different names. We got Eric Larson, we got... we're bringing Jeff Benner into the mix and all kinds of... It's hard to tell, This is almost like a... it's almost like a research-based dimensional merge, if you will, where all the researchers are kind of being mentioned in a video, But if you notice here, all these different symbols, which, on Eric Larson's channel, I sent the link on the last description that shows, how all this perfectly aligns with a lot of the, symbols that he goes and shows, the square root radii, how, this diagram here, how this is sort of like what a lot of this stuff is based off of. But I also want to say that despite that there is absolutely no evidence that dozanal gematria ever existed in the Hebrew language, and I'm not saying it did in this old language here, which, not everybody agrees is Hebrew, which is perfectly fine. This is what the crazy old Alan Horvath, who ran a Christian channel, used to, he used to say that these are Abba Father Yahweh's original Otiot forms, and they created everything, and blah blah blah. But the interesting thing about these number forms, which do have their, I'm going to mention another big name, Dr. Douglas Petrovich, who is an Egyptologist. He basically explains the Egyptian origin of every single one of these characters. So, some people could argue that, Moses never happened, the Israelites never happened, blah, 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 blah. Well, even if that never happened, see, here's the thing. Stories do have origins. And, a lot of this Middle Eastern stuff come from similar origins. And what we have here is what could very well be something that's inspired, not necessarily something that inspired the number forms themselves, but something that the number forms themselves have inspired. Perhaps whoever originally created this alphabet knew of the number forms, and whether consciously or unconsciously, they were planting some of these ideas in there. As you can see, the letter, which would be probably called Aleph, looks a lot like the number 1. There's a similarity to the number 1. Beith, which is the second symbol, has some similarities to the number 2. Remember last time I mentioned the angle in the number 3, according to duodecimal division. Well, it just so happens there is this letter here, which is possibly was called Gahar, which means angle, according to Dr. Douglas Petrovich's. So you can see how this is like a 4, but this was also like a picture of a door that you would basically go through. The letter Ha is, or Halal, is clearly, it's a man standing. Originally, it probably would have had an extra leg there, but you can kind of see how the 5 shape, it's possibly inspired by 5, or it inspired 5, one way or the other. The 6 with the straight line there looks a lot like the letter Wall. The 7 doesn't look too much like the letter Zayin until you realize what it looked like later, which it looked a lot like that. This is a picture of a rope, and in Hebrew it starts with a letter, or not just in Hebrew, but whatever language this was, which, like I've said, it's probably some type of Aramaic-ish Canaanite language. You got the it's like a heavy H sound. For this we have Bov, which means good. T, Bo, Bov. It's like a guttural T, like the modern day Aramaic and Hebrew bleth, the letter bleth. You can see the similarities there to it and the 9. The letter Yod, you can see the similarities to that, and you can see how if that crossed over anymore, you would basically just end up having the same exact shape as that. And this, both in its early form, you know, here's another early form of it, and you can see some similarities there to this symbol here, which is the number L, right? So you can see, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, dec L, you know. Also, you know, I don't know if this stuff was influenced in any way by these ancient number forms or vice versa, but what you have here is Alf, Beth, you know, Gimel or Gehar, Dalth, Ha, Wo, Zain, Bleth, Yob, and Qof. Well, not Qof. Qof is actually a later character. Qof would be this. Qof is a picture of a fiber stick. Qof. In Aramaic, Canaan speech, which would have been the these people would have been the slaves of the Egyptians, and they would have been the precursors to the people who are known commonly as the modern day Jewish people, right? So the mythology about Moses and all that type of stuff is based off of the freedom of the Israelites. And it could be, you know, I'm not even necessarily saying that that there wasn't a character that could have been enlightened, some enlightened being that liberated a certain group of people. And, you know, as centuries went by, you know, they began to take these ideas, take them more literally, and it could have gave us what we recognize as our modern day Bible, which we base a lot of our holy instructions and stuff off of. But that's basically what this is, you know. Was this ever a base 12 form of gematria in previous Middle Eastern times before the modern day Hebrew alphabet that used a base 10 gematria? I can't tell you the answer to that, but here's some interesting things. And another interesting thing that I've actually been having a little bit of struggle with is this number 3 here and the number 4. Eric Larson has been talking about this, and there is this this number 3 here. Basically, what you'll notice is, in order to get the coordinates correct, right, you will go up. Let's see, you go up 1, and then you go over 7, a little over half, right? And then you would go up, you go up 6, right? And that's where you got the coordinates there, right? And that's the first, that's the first coordinate. That dot right there is the first coordinate that you use to go, you know, 180 degrees around the circle. but I don't really understand where he pulls a lot of these numbers up from. Like, for example, he has the 0.36 there. And I do know that if you go over 7 and you go up 6, you would have 3 to 6 squares. So, since it's not a whole square, one of these squares, but it's these smaller squares, it would be a fraction. So it would be 0.36, 0.306. But what I don't really understand is how he knows to add 7 to that. That's one interesting thing, but he knows to add 7 to that, and it ends up giving him right decdo 6, which is 126, and then he comes over here, right? He does the Pythagorean theorem, and he takes a6, which is the same thing as decdo 6, and he I suppose he squares them and adds them together somehow, or does something like that. I don't understand the full math of how he gets a lot of these numbers, but I kind of grasp it a little bit. This stuff can be a little bit confusing, but crazy old Alan Horvath was a nutcase. Don't go believing that the universe is made out of a bunch of damn Otiot. But this stuff does have scientific significance to it, though, and mathematical significance. The same thing comes from this number 4. We know that we have a length of 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And we know that we also have a length of 3 here. 1, 2, 3, which is, 4 is kind of like the other side of 3 in base 12, because if you got a fourth of something, you got 3 of something, and then if you got a third of something, you got 4 of something. But another thing that was confusing is he made this Pythagorean theorem here. He has a 2, a 1, and he has a representation of the square root of 3. Now, I do recognize that there are 3 squares here, but where he gets square root 3, I'm not really 100% certain. I'm not sure what his point is here about square root 3. I've still been trying to figure out why he mentioned square root 3. He says this is the square root of 3 times 2, which is a possibility, which we know that square root of 3 times 2 equals square root of 10, So, I mean, he's got a lot of interesting stuff here, but I really could understand it a lot better.